That story that I've been promising you over the last while now, one of the most iconic structures in Uganda has been destroyed by a blaze. Makerere University, one of Africa's oldest and most prestigious learning institutions, will never be the same, really. The Vice-Chancellor, Barnabas Nawangwe, has vowed to restore the building known as the Ivory Tower that was destroyed by fire on Saturday. Let's take you to eNCA's correspondent, Isabel Nakirya, who is in Kampala for us with an update from there. Isabel, what do we know at this point about what led to the fire to this really an iconic building that's part of an iconic institution?
Thank you. What we do know now is that the distinctive white walls of that iconic tower and the blue shuttered windows have now darkened. The roof has caved in, and there are some huge cracks on the walls. There are various theories of what could have caused the fire and where the fire actually began from. We actually do know that the fire could have begun from the top floor, while other theories say it could have started from the bottom floor. But we are told that most of the records of the university have been destroyed. The offices, the main building, which is the Ivory Tower, housed the finance building. It housed the central registry of the university, the human resource building, the vice-chancellor's offices, deputy vice-chancellor, mainly all the offices of the the university were housed in that building. And so we are told that the university was just undergoing digitalization of some of its records, and it was halfway done. And by now, which means most of the records have been destroyed. The Minister of Education visited the site yesterday, and she said that the building will be restored in the shortest time possible. We also do know that the CID police have visited the site, and they say they are carrying out investigations, and a full record will be out probably in days to come. But we also do know that this university is over 98 years old, and there are very many alumni who have gone through this university, presidents like former presidents of Africa like Julius Nyerere, Mkapa, and former president of Uganda, Milton Obote, studied here. And so an iconic tower like this going up in flames is really sad.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there, Isabel. I mean, the assurances from authorities that the building itself will be restored in as quick a time as possible. The building, in my understanding, having been built much later after the opening of Makerere University, which was in 1922, and that building dating to around the 30s. But I suspect, though, Isabel, that the fear will not really be about restoring the building, which possibly can be achieved, but those records that you mentioned, what is being said about the fear of losing these records of such a historic institution?
Of course, there are very many suspicions going on. Such a grave, incident happens to one of the oldest universities in Africa. Of course, many people keep talking and saying many things, but we do know that some of the records were actually already digitalized, but we do not know actually which are the main records that did not get the chance of getting digitalized. But also the police says that they've gone into the building and almost 3/4 of the building is gone. It's only the first floor and the basement that is still standing. The building actually went up in flames on Saturday night, that is at midnight, and by Sunday morning they had tried to put out the fire. But a second fire went off again on the other part of the building that was not burnt on Sunday afternoon, after the fire brigade had left the site. And so we can say that almost the entire building is gone, and rebuilding it may take some time. as you know, during this time, the students were just about to go back to school in about a month's time in October, and this happens. So it's going to cause a lot of, destabilization to the students.
All right, thank you for that. eNCA's correspondent in Uganda, Isabel Nakirya, there with an update of the situation on the ground in as far as the fire is concerned at the Makerere University main admin block building. So let's take the conversation forward then, and we are joined by poet and historian Pitika Ntula, who joins me now for context, really. Pitika, we were just talking now with our correspondent in Uganda. I suppose let's start by you underlining just how significant this particular university is in as far as the history of the continent is concerned, the intellectual and academic output of the continent is concerned over the last few decades.
The Makerere University has been just one of the iconic institutions. People came from all over. It is in Uganda, but then it became almost the University of East Africa. Then it expanded. People came in from everywhere. It had trained people like Julius Nyerere, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, there. Not only that, but some of the people that were associated with it in terms of lecturing and studying, the Den Nabuderes, the Achima Fejes, the Isa Shivjis, and a variety of other people. It really shaped our liberation struggles, and also shaped the ideas post independence in Africa. It had produced some of the leading poets in it, leading thinkers. And for me, what is far much more important on what has happened is that the university must have a backup system. We are entering the fourth industrial revolution. There is a message here, not only for Makerere, but for our own universities here, or any university in Africa, because to lose records that have been there for such a long time will be just one of the most tragic things. And as our country is moving the way in which it is moving, we were lucky that we had the fees must fall and the students were disciplined. If any of the universities was banned, the record that would have gone would have been very devastating. So this Makerere ban must be a warning to us.
You take me exactly to my next point, and I suppose the reason why we insisted on this interview, the heritage more than anything else, because as you rightly point out, I would say perhaps in terms of prestige, Makerere would rank somewhere there with the likes of Fort Hare University here in South Africa. So as you say, I mean, lessons to be drawn there. And if we go even further back, the situations around the ruins in Timbuktu and what then became of when there was that insurgency a few years ago and some of the damage that actually occurred there. So talk to me about the importance of preserving this particular heritage of Africa in as far as intellectual output and academic output is concerned.
It is absolutely very significant. Let us recall that Riasan Naidu, an ex-student of mine, worked with the ex-president Thabo Mbeki in the preservation of the manuscripts that were found in Mali. That is how very important those. But again, that project got cancelled when Zuma came into power. So the question of protecting and promoting our universities and keeping our records and keeping our history, that's one of the best heritages that we have. And when you look at the people who went through those institutions, the books that they've written, the researches that they have done, Makerere, like the old Fort Hare, that trained even people like Kenneth Kaunda and other people coming from other parts of Africa, are one of those few universities that are a very good heritage for us to celebrate.
And then talk to me lastly, Pitika, about the notion that African heritage, which should have pride of place, is sometimes downplayed. And I make that proposition partly by drawing parallels with the extent to which, many of us in the news media went to great lengths to give full coverage to the fire at the Notre Dame and basically knew everything about the Notre Dame. Are we doing, and I suppose it's an obvious question here with an obvious answer, the disservice to Africans by not playing up the significant role of our own heritage as encapsulated by such institutions as Makerere University?
It seems like the dice is loaded against Africa in terms of the leadership that we have. That leadership has been interpolated into Western thinking, Western morality, Western education, philosophy, practically everything. Nothing that is actually Africa do we find absolutely with pride. It can even goes over is that we will destroy other people's statues and monuments without thinking about replacing those. That's the nature of the leadership that Africa has now, as opposed to the leadership of the Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Toure, Nyerere, the earlier people who really wanted a very powerful one state, one Africa, one nation, one currency, and an education system that will be very reflective of our own culture, of our philosophies, of our religion, and of our spirituality. That's what they really wanted. But the crops that came after that, they are looters, greedy, self-seeking. Therefore, Makerere, banning is, okay, we will get a grant in order to go and rebuild there, but not addressing the very essence of the loss that Africa and the rest of those other people who are associated with it.
It goes back to what your good friend Ngugi wa Thiong'o said, right, about decolonizing the African mind.
Yes, the decolonizing the African mind that is actually in chains. It takes me back to in Swaziland where a white guy there, Tyson, kept a baboon, chained. The whole day the baboon is just walking around a pole. When we said to him, you hate freedom, he released that baboon. He released the baboon, but the baboon continued to walk around that pole because he didn't realize that it was free. That's the state of African leadership at this particular moment.
What would you say should be the role of, we talk of organizations globally such as UNESCO and their role in preserving the shared heritage of humanity. What would be the role then of African leaders, and how urgent is it that something of that nature gets going and basically some of these historic sites are identified and the effort is made almost immediately to try and preserve those. I think here, for example, I think about Great Zimbabwe, for example, the pyramids of Sudan, for example. These are parts of the heritage of Africa that are really downplayed in terms of their significance, and it seems to me there's not an active effort to say, hey, actually as Africans we have this heritage and it's a great heritage. Let's talk about it. Let's preserve it.
Yeah, what you are here, you are touching on a very significant thing. The history of South Africa is that the colonialists say we arrived here simultaneously here in Africa. Therefore, before they came and before we came, they claimed there was nothing. As a result, Iron Age and Stone Age ruins are still lying underneath there. How many of our people, even our students, even in university, know of the Lichtenberg heads? Those cultural heads that are in Lichtenberg, Mashishini, in Mpumalanga today, were created in 500 AD here in South Africa. We have got a 75,000 old, megalith in Waterfall Boven that is called Adam's, calendar. We have got the sculptures, the golden sculptures coming from Mapungu. There are a lot of stuff when we have to dig. Other places like in Swartkrans and all. We are not doing that. But if, say, SADC, it can get itself to say, as a region around in here, let us agree that we are all jointly going to finance the issue of carrying out archaeological excavations in there. They will save us in terms of our tourism. It'll bring in money, but our sense of being, of who we are, where we have been, and where we have to head for, that information is of crucial and critical importance to us.
All right, thank you for your time, Pitika and Ntula. Always enjoy talking to you. And of course, our conversations always start off with a particular focus, and we end up getting carried away and self-indulgent there. I can never resist there whenever talking to Pitika and Ntula. But the conversation had started with us talking about the fire at the Makerere University. That being part of African heritage, a proud African heritage, then led to some of the conversations that you were hearing towards the end of that conversation.